What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Pokémon designs are often the main draw for people to either love or abhor a specific monster. But something that isn't always considered as much is the actual name of the Pokémon. This is a subtle aspect that can change the way that you perceive a Pokémon without you even knowing it. There are plenty of okay names, like Ponyta is fine, whereas Rapidash is a great name. There's also things like Girafarig being the same forwards and backwards, just like him, and a ton of solid pun names, like Roggenrola or Kangaskhan, which are good in my eyes. I am also a fan of the classic portmanteau of combining two words into clever wordplay, like Toucanon, Octillery, Excadrill, Empoleon, Colossal, and so many more. But they're not always that great. So the first one that we could fix, and the reason I even thought of this to begin with, is Talonflame. This is a great Pokémon that many people love, and if they don't, it's just because they hate getting destroyed by it. But even with all of that, you've got to admit that its name is quite underwhelming. I know I said I'm a fan of combining words, but not the whole words. That'd be akin to calling it Aqua Arachnid instead of making the name flow. The first two stages are better at this as a lead-in by using Fletch in different ways, but then they just basically change the name to Fireclaw. For my taste, such a great Pokémon should not be saddled with such a disappointing name. So, how do we fix it? Well, I would say something to do with a phoenix would probably be appropriate. After all, we've never had a Pokémon with that in the name. Okay, I know Ho-Oh basically means phoenix, but the English version is still up for grabs. So I think the name Phoenixsend could work, combining it with the word ascend to create some interesting overlap between the two and make it sound unique. Alternatively, if you don't like that, we could go with Ascender to show it rising from the ashes, but I feel like it's still better than the hot bird feet that it has now. Well, with that, I feel like we should also take a look at the fire-type Scorbunny. I did not like this starter design when I saw it, and the name did not help. As wrong as everybody was about it becoming an electric type, everyone seemed to correctly guess that its origins were related to a football player, which just makes it even worse for me. Scorch Bunny combining I could maybe get behind, but if it's literally just score like points in a game, I am not pleased with the results. So I think the simple change of Scorabbit would do wonders to at least make it flow better. And if you think that's too close to Raboot, which it evolves into, it's no different than the similarities between Tepig and its evolution Pignite, so maybe that could just be a fire-type starter trend. But since we're on Galar starters, I do think Rillaboom could use our help. I like it best amongst the three, but it sounds like it was named by a kindergartner. I get it, it's a big ape drum player, but surely we can add in a little finesse. My suggestion would be to call it Concussion, displaying both its origins as a giant ape, but also its propensity for percussion. The fact that it sounds like the word concussion is just a nice bonus, so it works on many different levels. Now, I've made no secret that I find Licky Licky appalling, but its name is just the cherry on top of the horrible cake. It's just the same word twice. What is this, some kind of Teletubby creature? Some might not be impressed by Lickitung either, but at least it's not that dumb. So looking at the mouth and its various attributes, I'm inclined to change its name to Palatung. This is not just a reference to taste, as they call a palate, but also greater control of the palate in the Pokémon's mouth could give it more precise use of its ludicrously sized tongue, or perhaps even a place to store it. Plus, I think the tongue part of its name is a bit more important than the lick part. So I'm not sure that it would change my feelings about this Pokémon, but at least its name could be said in polite conversation. Another common complaint for worst Pokémon names is naming them after real things. Ekans at least has its name backwards, but others like Muck seem to bother people. I'm not as perturbed by these, but I will agree that Seal could be better. It's a letter different than the real animal it's based on. Dewgong gets a pass from me because its spelling includes dew to show off its water typing, So that's clever, even though dugong is a real word, which is just another name for a manatee. So keeping in step with that, what if we called the first stage Manasee? It stands out a little more, and kind of even creates a bond with the water-type friend Horsey as well, so I like it. And maybe now it can stand proud against all of the other seal Pokemon out there. On that note, there's also the onomatopoeia like Kling Kling that annoy people, but to me the worst one is actually Hoot Hoot. First of all, it causes me physical pain when people mispronounce it Hoot Hoot. It makes sense phonetically, but come on guys, just use your brain for a second. So just to avoid that confusion altogether, maybe we could change it to Hootawny? Tawny owls are fairly common variants of these wise birds, and even kind of resemble the Johto Pokemon as well. Or if we wanted to lean into the clock inspirations, maybe we could go with Pendulum or some other adaptation like that. But another Johto entry that I would seek to change is Shuckle. They claim that Shuck means some kind of shell, but I don't buy it. Its category is the mold Pokemon. I'm relatively certain this does not mean a creeping fungus or anything, more like a cast or a dye where it holds in all those berries to ferment. In that light, I think we could call it Crucimold, to maybe draw people's minds to its berry collecting tendencies instead of sounding like rejected corn. After all, it can hold the berry juice item in the wild, so it seems pretty important, but calling it Juiceable just sounds like you should throw it into a juicer. Another lackluster name to me is Scatterbug. Not that any of the regional bugs are necessarily home runs, but literally just describing the kind of bug it is seems a little absent of effort. At least Blipbug is related to the radar thing, but Scatterbug I can only assume comes from the fine scales they produce and their habit of widely dispersing it. But instead of emphasizing its natural defense mechanisms, its name really just makes it sound like a minor slob. So maybe we could call it Pulvilarva instead. Larva is obvious, but Pulvil specifically refers to a kind of perfumed powder, which could actually connect it more to its final stage than it is now. Another poor setup in my eyes is Grimmsnarl. It's two unrelated words that also have little to do with the Pokemon itself. Okay, Grimm I guess can count since it is a dark type, and could perhaps likewise be a reference to Brothers Grimm fairy tales, but Snarl? I know it's got the whole snaggletooth thing, but is that really the most important aspect about it? It literally can't even learn the move Snarl. This is Growlithe all over again. If anything, it should be defined by its hair that it has wrapped around its whole body, which is creepy and gross. It's not like Impidimp and Morgrim are knockout names either, but Grimmsnarl is just a lie. So if we could change it, I would tweak it to Griminnis. I feel like this sticks to the characterizations of the entire Pokemon line, and honestly strikes me with a little more fear when associating the name with the towering Gigantamax form. So it's not a huge change, but I think Griminnis would make a big difference, even if it does kind of sound like a McDonald's mascot. There are other names that are up for discussion, like Geodude, but I will defend this one. It's not quite as simple as a synonym for Earth Guy, because there is the specific rock Geode. So the fact that it has an exact origin does seem to mean that they were intentional with this name. The same is true for Cufant. It might just sound like a simple cute elephant, however, Cu is the designation for copper on the periodic table, so it's much more intricate than many people might notice at first. I cannot say the same about Sock and Throw. Not every terrible Pokemon has a terrible name, but in situations like this, it's just a disgrace. I know these are basic actions to take in martial arts, but this is a little too basic when you can get confused with foot coverings. At the very least, they could have named them Hitmonsock and Hitmonthrow, not that I want them to ruin that line. So I'm thinking that maybe we could shift their names to something like Judoni and Karatiman. These would more accurately describe their fighting disciplines, with Oni and Demon giving full credence to the fiendish origins of these monstrosities. It wouldn't really fix all the other problems, but every little bit helps. Other discrepancies arise with certain regional forms, such as Sandshrew becoming an ice type, and therefore losing all connection to the sand that it might have had. So a different name probably should have been used there to call it Snowshrew or something, because that is where it would be found in the wild. But if we're talking about ice type regional variants, we might as well bring up Mr. Mime. Obviously, this Pokemon has been in our nightmares for years, but the name, at least in English, is misleading because they can in fact both be male and female. The Japanese did it better by calling it Barriered, which we could just use here, but I think we can go a little further and call it Baricature. This keeps the idea of the invisible walls that it can create, while also playing on its mime inspiration and jesting nature that would lead it to mock others. However, that is not the end of the story, because we got Mr. Rime again quite recently, which is arguably even a worse name than before. I know the Galar region gave them more of a focus on dance, but I think a suitable name might be Pantomolt. This still draws from the mime theme, and while tumult can mean mayhem, I'm more leaning towards the side of commotion, or hullabaloo as said by the thesaurus. So I think those attributes could line up fittingly to describe what used to be DJ Rhymes over here, and I guess it wouldn't make sense for it to be called Mime Jr. if those other ones had changed, so it would also have to amend its name, something to the effect of Mimiclown, maybe? At least that would be more in line with Baricature and Pantomolt. That one could probably be better, but I have expended a lot of creativity for this, and I'm about to run dry. Now you might say that means that it's hard to come up with good Pokemon names, but I'm just one guy and I did this all in about a week. So the group of people that have years to come up with these kinds of things really don't have excuses other than they just didn't seem to try. I know that what constitutes a good Pokemon name will be different for everybody, but I also know that there will be plenty more names out there that will need work. So let me know your suggestions for fixing Pokemon names down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time!